Hello, everyone. It is Holy Week. It's Holy Week, RJ, right? I believe it is.
Yes, sir.
So we'll be coming to you Wednesday morning. Exciting week. A lot to celebrate. Welcome to Escaping the Chains podcast. I'm your host, John Humphreys. We want to thank Delivered Media for doing all of our production. If you find them on Facebook, they will get you all set up. They also do church sound and things like that. Also want to thank Los Amores. I tell you this every week. It's at the Boston Hill Center. Go check them out and get anything steak. Although I did have steak and chicken on some rice with cheese, Kevin, and that was good. And they also have a baked potato thing they do with queso and meat on it. That might be my new favorite. I was a fan. So go check them out. If you haven't had a chance yet to subscribe, follow, give us a review on YouTube, Escaping the Chains podcast, on Spotify, Escaping the Chains podcast, and on Apple Podcasts, Escaping the Chains podcast. Please go do that. Share it with a friend. It's really helpful when we get the feedback. Comment on the stuff. Share it. We really appreciate when you're doing that, but it also helps us move to different levels so we can do different things. So we are excited to have you here with us here today. We have our friend Kevin on. We're going to introduce him in a second. This is going to cover, we're probably going to cover who knows what, because we never do. We just kind of go with the flow. But we are going to talk about the impact of alcohol on the probably on the family structure, just the impact that alcohol can have. The negative impact that alcohol can have on a person's life. So today we have Kevin Potter. Kevin, how are you doing today?
I'm doing wonderful. It's been a good Monday. Had a pretty easy day at work. Just kind of relaxed after work, read my Bible a little bit, and I was excited to come on here and talk to you. I love, giving testimonies and talking to people, about Jesus and about the struggles with addiction. And yeah,
Kevin, you send me scriptures almost every day. It's not every day, but I love that you tell me kind of what you're meditating on and everything. What have you been in today?
Today, my reading was it's funny that how God works was about the king, the guy that owed the king the 10,000 bags of gold, and how he was forgiven. And then when he went back out, he seen somebody that owed him money, and he demanded that money and had that guy put in jail. And then the king finds out, and he's like, I forgave you, and then you came out here and you did this to this person.
Yeah.
I bring that up, I was in a little fender bender on Friday, and it banged up my front bumper a little bit, and I found out that guy didn't have insurance. So, for about, I don't know, half hour after that happened, I was like, you feel that anger building up in you, and then, I read that today. I just thought it was funny how that spoke to me, because I was like, you just feel it on your heart, like you don't want to come down on somebody, because you probably, in my mind, I'm like, he probably doesn't really, what am I going to take from him, if he's not really doing all that well or whatever, if I was in his position, I'd want to be forgiven, Yeah. And it's like one of those things where you want to go back to the old you and be like, oh, I'm going to sue you and I'm going to do this, but then you feel like the scripture working on you, and you're like, I really can't, no matter how angry I have or any emotions I have connected to it, because you want to just be a better Christian and a better follower.
Yeah. So you're going to eat the cost on that probably, huh?
Yeah. It's probably not going to be as bad as I thought it was going to be at first. So stuff happens. I mean, that's part of the God changing my heart, is the forgiveness. Just thinking about maybe where that guy's at and where I'm at, the anger kind of subsided, but I've been figuring out all weekend, how am I going to fix this, almost to the point I was like, I could just leave it. My car runs fine. But, I'm still trying to work that out. But it was definitely like you feel the spirit moving in you. And sometimes it's not like me, myself, that needs like the power. Like I felt like this guy needed a prayer too. So I prayed for him Saturday morning and Sunday morning.
Yeah.
Like I know he got like 3 tickets. He probably got his car towed and
and you never know what people are going through. I think that's sometimes like when it comes to tipping at restaurants, people are like, oh, they did a horrible job. It's like, you don't know, like I've waited at tables. You have no idea what they're going through on that day. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
It could be a complete disaster. Their kids could be sick. They could have their electricity. You never know what's going on. So Kevin, let's talk a little bit about, so you, alcohol was your substance of choice.
Yes.
When did you figure out, like, how did you get introduced to it? But when did you figure out that, like, that was something you enjoyed doing on a regular basis?
The first time I drank, I was 14. I didn't really party in high school. I was kind of a nerd. I was pretty busy too. I played sports and I worked. I would say right after high school is when I kind of started to drink more, like, I don't know. I don't even want to say regular basis, but maybe a couple weekends a month.
Yeah.
And I kind of I didn't smoke weed in high school, but when I got out and I got around people that smoked it, that was kind of like the thing I did more than drinking. And then, I got to like 21 and I could get alcohol and it was legal. So it kind of like moved into the space that marijuana filled. And so I did both. It was mostly weed Monday through Friday and then alcohol on every weekend. So my early 20s, I did that a lot. I got arrested a few times, not necessarily for alcohol, but there was alcohol involved.
Yeah.
In my early 20s. And then, as I moved out of that phase, I met my ex-wife and I was like, wasn't really like looking to be in a relationship, but we just kind of hit it off. And I still drank and smoked weed a little bit, but I was like, okay, this might be my sign, like it's time to start acting like an adult. And at the time, I'm 26, so I should have already been kind of acting like an adult, but I didn't.
Yeah.
I was like 19 for like 7 years, it felt like.
Yeah.
And so it slowed down. And, I mean, when we would go to parties, I would definitely drink heavily, like if we'd go to friends' houses and stuff or go canoeing. But, like, it slowed down. Like, I didn't do anything through the week, per se, so... and then definitely when I got married, by then I'd quit smoking weed and I was a weekend drinker, but not even really that bad right away. And I can't look back on like pinpointing it. I want to say maybe a year after I got married or maybe 2 years after I got married, this is about 2017. My ex-wife worked second shift and I worked first shift. So through the week, in the afternoons, I was bored. I'd just be sitting there with the dogs. And, it started out a little bit, a couple shooters, maybe a half pint, but I did it every day. Mm-hmm. And there wasn't really anything going on bad. Like, things were actually pretty good. We were getting ready to buy a house. I had a good job, a brand new truck. And, my life as far as, like, I don't know, you could say material things and like things you think in your head that you want. I had them. And I just kept drinking, It's like a weird thing I got into was I collected bourbon. And it was weird, like I bought these expensive bottles of alcohol, but I didn't even drink them. I would go buy other alcohol to drink and I collected these. But it got to be a really expensive habit. So to get out of it, I was like, I just won't buy any more of those and I'll drink those ones. And it kind of like, I wanted to get rid of it fast because I didn't want it like just sitting around. And when that was gone, then I kind of went to like a pint of vodka every day. And then within a couple months, it was 2 pints. and then it was 3 pints, and then I quit buying the pints, and I'd buy a fifth and a pint because it was cheaper. And it took off really quick from like 2018 to, the summer of 2020 is when I went to my first rehab.
So you're married now, and
No, I'm divorced now.
no, I'm talking about in the story.
Okay.
In the story, you're married. You're starting to drink a lot now, it sounds like.
Mm-hmm.
What was, backtracking a little bit, what was your relationship like with your parents?
I never met my real dad.
Mm-hmm.
So I didn't really have a dad growing up. I had a little brother, and his dad was in my life for a few years, but he wasn't really around. And my relationship with my mom growing up wasn't very good. Most of what I remember from my childhood is as far as like a relationship with my mom was like punishment.
Yeah.
So I got paddled a lot. Now I probably earned some of that, but like when I think back on like, I don't know, I can probably remember back to like 3rd grade, like that, like getting in trouble with my mom, and I'd get paddled, and I was like the kid. I always had to go outside. I wasn't an inside kid, so it kind of seemed like if my mom was in my presence, I was going to get punished. If she wasn't, I was just going to be outside. So I didn't really grow like I don't know what you call it, like a
Bond or...
Yeah, you could say a bond or like any type of like strong connection with her.
Yeah.
And the older I got, and I started doing summer work in middle school, and I worked in the summers in high school. I was always busy, so I didn't really have to be at home. And I remember when I was a little kid, if I could go to my friend's house and stay the night, that's where I wanted to go. I did not want to be at my house.
Yeah.
And, so my mom had married a guy, I think I was in maybe 7th grade or 8th grade, and they were together for a little while, and they were truck drivers. And when I was 19, my mom murdered that guy. So my mom hasn't even been in my life really from like anything, other than talk to her in prison since I was 19, and I just turned 40.
So that was 21 years ago, right?
Mm-hmm.
What is that? Am I right?
Yeah.
So when you were 19, your mom, and you were living in the Gas City area.
Yeah.
So everybody knew that. What kind of impact? So basically your mom, and she got convicted, obviously, of murdering him. What was that like on your end, having to navigate that? Probably, I'm guessing everybody knew about it,
Yeah. I never really got in trouble in high school. I mean, a few times I did some things. I'm not going to sound innocent, but, by the time that had happened, like most of my friends in high school had went on to college and to do things, and, and I'm just kind of floating around and working, and, I could, from a responsible standpoint, I could hold a job and pay my bills, and then my extra money went to whatever. But the maturity wasn't there.
Yeah.
And the people I was hanging out with weren't like really people I should be hanging out with. And believe it or not, so obviously the family that lost their son or their brother or their uncle was impacted, but I was impacted too, because I didn't choose for my mom to go out and kill somebody.
Yeah.
I had no control over that. And people definitely would ask. They didn't think about like how that affected me, because I did lose my mom too. Granted, it's the circumstances you don't really get as much sympathy. And I wasn't really seeking that, but I didn't want people to just be like, tell me all about it. And, what do you know? And I was like, I don't know, because I didn't do anything with her. Like
right.
she did what she wanted. I never asked what they were doing. By the time I was like a sophomore, she didn't really question what I was doing. She knew I had a job. She didn't have to provide for me. I bought my own car. I drove my own car. I had my own money. Basically as long as like I didn't do something extreme, which I didn't, she had no reason to really be concerned with what I was doing, and I wasn't concerned with what she was doing. So it was really hard to answer that question because people think you're trying to avoid the question. But I was like, I know I really don't have an answer. And, I was interrogated about certain things when that was going on, and I'm trying to tell, at this point I'd never been in trouble before, and you got 3 detectives are asking you questions, and I was like, dude, I don't know. And then they'll ask you the question again a different way, and I'm like, well, I kind of already answered that, and I was like, I'm not trying to avoid anything. I don't know, and I was old enough, if they thought they had anything, I could have went to jail, and but I don't know. I didn't know anything. I never even, it wasn't until years later that some of the details I found out from family members, because I never asked. I didn't care. It's not that I didn't care my mom was going to prison, but I was like, I just didn't want to know.
Yeah.
For the longest time. And some of the things I found out later, I was like, it was kind of shocking, because a lot of people get piecemeal. So this person heard this and this person heard this, and both those things they heard might be true, but this person don't know this and this, and they were expecting you to put it together for them. And I'm like, I really don't know.
So that was a lot to deal with. So now let's fast forward. We're back to 2020. You've been drinking daily. Yeah, so we've been drinking daily for a while and increasing how much you're drinking. So in 2020, what triggered, what pushed you into going to rehab for the first time? Inpatient treatment, whatever is the politically correct way to say that.
So I believe at that time we were doing some marriage counseling.
Was she getting upset with you? Like, was it starting to impact your marriage at that point, or was she still kind of naive to it?
She knew I had a drinking problem for about a year. I would say at least a year before I went. And the thing is she didn't know how bad because I hid it so much.
Yeah.
Okay, so at this point, I'm lying to her, and she doesn't know I'm lying, and I'm hiding it. I'm hiding bottles. I'm sure you've heard stories. I'm hiding bottles, and I'm like stopping at the liquor store and chugging one of the bottles on the way home and throwing the bottle out the side of the road. And, it was reckless, but I didn't feel that reckless because, I would make sure, I was about halfway home. I'd hurry up and chug it, and I'd have one stoplight, and I could turn right, and then I'd be home, So it was I try to minimize the chances of me getting caught drinking and driving by doing the most of it in this little span where I didn't have to stop. It was quick. I'd make one right and a left, and I'm home.
Isn't it funny how your brain works when you're when something has a hold of you like that? It's like the things that we consider logical, and everything's kind of to be able to drink it, get drunk again, get high again, and not get caught. It's like that's kind of the space that you live in, really,
Yeah, and I hadn't been in trouble in a long time. I hadn't really lost anything to drinking, and I was still married, and we're, at this point we're still communicating as husband and wife.
Yeah.
And but it was affecting the intimacy and the communication, because certain questions I would dodge. And she didn't even know I was drinking as much as I was. So I felt like I was still in control and I could stop when I wanted. In my mind, I was like, look, I'm not really doing anything wrong. And but in June of 2020, when I was at work and I got sick, and I came home and I was like, I'm drinking too much and I really can't stop. And I told her that. And she started looking up rehabs, and she got a hold of Fort Wayne Recovery. And at this time, Allendale wasn't open yet. I think it was being built. Mm-hmm. She had to go to Illinois to a place called Banyan. And it's in the middle of nowhere where I went. There's no town within 5 or 10 miles of it. It's just in the middle of nowhere, this detox center. And they got me squared away a little bit. I still had a big ego. I still thought I was better than people. But I remember I got that month under my belt, and I was like, yeah, I'm good now. But I still went to Fort Wayne Recovery, and I did good there. You know, I didn't really put as much effort in as I should have. It was during COVID, so all of our classes were on telehealth.
Mm-hmm.
Like, we didn't actually go to the building till, you know, like maybe the end of August, September. And I was about to graduate, and I relapsed the night before. And I came back, and they were going to drug test me, so I told on myself. And that was my
So
first...
you left the facility, came back, and they were going to test you. Is that what happened?
Yeah, I think at this point I had went home. I'd been home maybe a week or two, and I was coming back. Now, I'm still being paid to be off work, so I got to go home for a few days, and then I was coming back for graduation, but the night before I had to do a drug screen. And so that Friday, instead of graduating, I went to Allendale for the first time. I had to go there for...
Which is inpatient treatment in Fort Wayne, Indiana. Yeah.
That was my second detox, my first time at Allendale. They only sent me there for a week, so it was Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and then Monday through Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and came back Monday. And I kind of just had to do a few things over, and I graduated Fort Wayne Recovery the first time, like the end of October, and I went back to work. Now, I'll tell you, telling my ex-wife that I relapsed really crushed her. But I said, I'm not done. Like,
When you relapsed before graduating.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
She did not like that. But when I came back and I showed him I was doing stuff, you know, my therapist at Fort Wayne Recovery explained to her that, you know, that this does happen. But he came back, he admitted to it, and he went to do what he had to do. But, like, for her, she was ready for her husband to be home.
Yeah.
So I had already not been a good husband going into rehab. And then in rehab, I'm not showing myself to be a very good husband. But she stuck it out, and I came home. And, you know, she's got a lot of things on her mind because at this point, we'd been together 9 years, and we didn't have any kids together. And I'd got her pregnant while I went home on a pass from rehab. It's kind of weird. That's how that happened. But I remember I was back at Fort Wayne Recovery, and she called me and said, guess what? And she was pregnant. So now we're getting ready to have our first kid, and I'm coming out of rehab. And, you know, my job wasn't super thrilled I relapsed, but they were super thrilled that I finished rehab and came back to work, and they gave me a good spot, and it was really good place to be. And, you know, I did good. I drank a couple times after that, but I didn't really feel the urge to keep drinking. It was kind of like I had one of those days where I was like, I'm just going to go get something to drink. But it didn't really take off again. So we go to May 2021, and that's when my daughter's born. And I start feeling stressed out because I didn't have a dad. I didn't really, you know, have an example of a good parent. And, you know, my ex-wife had both her parents, so she kind of knew more than I did, that's for sure. And I was nervous, you know. I didn't really hold my daughter the first couple months at all, and she was kind of doing everything, and I would just work a bunch to make sure we had money. And I would say by the end of that summer, I think my daughter was almost 3 months, I started drinking again. But this time when I started drinking, the very first day I went and got a fifth, thinking it was going to last me a couple days, and it didn't even last a couple hours. And it was immediate. I went straight to a fifth every day, to even more than before. I was drinking 2 fifths a day. You know, looking back, I don't know how I was functioning, but I did that for almost 3 months. And I tried to quit on my own at the end of October. So I did Friday, Saturday, Sunday. I went to work that Monday, and right around 11 in the morning, maybe noon, I had a seizure, like withdrawing from alcohol. And it was a really bad one. I fell out. I remember like my body being really stiff, and they said I seized up, I want to say twice on the floor. And then the ambulance came, and I remember I could open my eyes, but it was like blurry so I could see, but I couldn't see, and like they're wheeling me all the way from the back of Woodmark through Woodmark, and I'm like just coming out of a seizure, and I remember people looking at me and like the looks on their faces. I remember two people's faces because they were so close to me, and they were like, "Whoa."
Yeah.
It was terrifying because they're looking at you, and the look on their face, I was like, yeah, this ain't good. And I seized up again in the ambulance, and I seized up at the hospital, and finally they just put me on some kind of medicine drip where I wasn't going to have a seizure again.
Yeah.
Wound up in Fort Wayne, and up to this point, lying had worked. Well, I thought it was working for me. So I lied to the doctor, said, I don't know why I had a seizure. I don't get it. And they're like, well, we're looking at your lab results. Your liver don't look good, and you got really, really high blood pressure, but they're going to look. And it got to a point I was going to have some more tests, but at the time they told me I couldn't work for 3 weeks, minimum. I couldn't be with my daughter, so basically I just went home and sat, couldn't work, couldn't be with my daughter. And after about a week, I started drinking again, and I didn't go heavy. I was like, I'll just do it light. So I'd go to the liquor store, even though I wasn't supposed to be driving, and I just got 2 pints, which is like a fifth, and I would drink a little of that one during the day, and then at night when I was ready to go to sleep, I'd pound one and eat and go to sleep. But I got to the point, my ex-wife had trusted me with my daughter one of these nights, even though she wasn't, and I was drinking, and I started feeling funny, and I called my brother. I said, listen, I need you to come to my house and get my daughter. Like, this is a part of my story I haven't shared. He's like, what's going on? I said, dude, I've been drinking. I got to go back to rehab. I need you to come get my daughter right now. It's like, I can't drive. And he came over, and I was like, dude, I'm in some serious trouble right now. Like, I don't know how I'm going to explain this to my wife. Now I remember she went on a girls' trip for the weekend, and that's how I was watching my daughter for the weekend, and she didn't want to do it, and I was like, I'm fine. And then I did this, and definitely, the first I went back to Allendale, and the first time I talked to her, like the sound of her voice of like, she was not happy with me. Like you could hear it, her tone. And I was thinking we were going to be able to work through it because she told me she didn't want to do the rehab thing again. And here I am back in Allendale, and I said, look, I got it for real this time. So now I left her at home with a kid by herself, and she's trying to work. And I'm just sitting at rehab again, and I'm trying to take it serious, but I still kind of felt some effects of the seizure, but not a lot. But I got through it, and I went back to Fort Wayne recovery, and I was doing good, and I was going to graduate this time, but they were like, you could stay for 2 more weeks or you can go home. But if you go home, you don't graduate. And I was like, well, I don't really care. I've graduated before. You got me stabilized. I went home. And when I got home, I could tell the marriage was over. Like, I seen it, but I didn't want to believe it. I didn't think we were going to get divorced. I thought it was going to be rough for a while. So I just worked all the time. And I went to meetings for like 3 days, but then I told her I was going to meetings, and I would sit in the parking lot at the meeting and drink in my truck and then drive back. And I would be like eating breath mints and stuff. And she would just look at me and know I drank, even though I was like, I went to the meeting.
Yeah.
You know?
So she's about fed up.
Oh, I think she was fed up when I went to.
I think like, her trusting you with the situation to begin with on the weekend thing probably was a lot to process. But so, all right, well, so continue with what, like, so how did that play out? So you're acting like you're going to meetings and did you ever think like, I've got a serious problem here? Like, well, like when you're looking at the building where you're supposed to be, going to meetings and you're drinking, is it just like, can you recall what your thought process was in those times? Like,
honestly, I thought I was going to get to a point where I was tired of drinking. And I was, but I had that demon on me, that alcoholic demon. And then I had some other demons, like, you got one, like, telling you, like, just keep drinking and don't worry about this. And it's like, you're not worried about your family. I'm worried about myself. Like, I'm being very selfish.
yeah.
Like, very self-centered. And
So you're kind of living in your own head, in your own world, and like you're not,
Yeah.
It's not that you don't see that your actions are impacting other people. It's just not really processing it because like everything's so internal. You know what I mean? Yeah. It's like, I've got to get through this day and I've got to feel more comfortable and so it is a selfish, like, feeding the flesh type of thing. Like, I've got to make sure I'm good.
And I had no empathy for other people's feelings. Like, I could see that my brother was hurting and my in-laws were hurting. My ex-wife was hurting. My best friend was hurting. And, in my mind, I'm like, why is everybody so mad at me? Like, I went back to rehab and they don't know that I'm drinking, but they knew,
Yeah, we're not as slick as we think we are a lot of times.
Yeah. And, I was only back from rehab that time 7 weeks. And this time work wasn't working with me. They gave me a very not fun job. I get why they did it. They were done with me.
Well, you've also got people putting in for those better jobs that, you know what I mean, that are working their butts off to get them too, you know what I mean?
And I had it was, it was April of 2022. It was on a Sunday, and I'd been sneaking drinking. And, I got to work the next morning, like really early, and then my wife's trying to put my daughter to bed. And this is crazy. So I didn't realize how drunk I was, and I had a small bottle of alcohol in my pocket. But I had these really baggy shorts with big pockets, so you couldn't really see it. And I went in there. I was like, well, let me try to put her to bed. And she's like, you can try, but you're drunk. And I was like, I'm not drunk. So I get my daughter, and I'm holding her. And I go to pull out my phone, and I'm standing up, and that bottle hits the floor. And it was so loud that she heard it. And she came in there, and she goes, give me our daughter. Where's the bottle? And I kicked it under the dresser, and I was like, it's right there. And she goes, I just want you to leave. I've never really shared that detail of it. She starts crying, and my daughter's crying, and the look in her face of despair of having to put up with me. She said, I just want you to leave. I do not want you here. And I just knew, for that moment, I was like, yeah, I got to leave. Drunk. And I got my keys, and I didn't realize it, but she handed me $200. She goes, here's this. And I was like, I got my bank card. And I called my brother. I went to his house. And when I walked out that door and got in my truck, I never went back in that house again. Mm. We were never together. When I looked at her and she said bye, I said, I love you, bye. We were never together again. I never walked back in that house, except for to go get my property. And that was one time.
So she was like, bye.
Yeah. So I didn't realize it even then. I went to my brother's. I said, hey, Bob, I'm going through it. I'm struggling. I was like, I'm just going to be honest. I'm about to drink right now. He's like, he just looks at me. He's like, okay, I get it. You know, what I was telling him what's going on and what I did. I called off work the next day. He's like, you going to work? I said, no, I called off, bro. I'm hungover. And I had the audacity. You know, I bought more alcohol at the liquor store, so I didn't have to leave my brother's for a few days. I had the audacity to go sit in his living room in front of his girlfriend and his kid and just start drinking a fifth of vodka. Like, I was twacked out. You know, and this isn't even the worst part of my addiction yet.
Yeah.
Like, I'm just now entering, you could say, I'm at the front door of the furnace. I ain't even walked in there yet.
So let's dig into that part. So you've had just to move forward, you've been in and out of treatment a couple more times.
Yeah.
Let's talk about let's get to the last time that you went to treatment and kind of let's unpack so how did we go from all of this and everything getting worse, you know what I mean? And now you know what I mean, have you're single again, basically, and so you're going into treatment for the last time. Was anything different, or were you just going back because it's what you knew?
So when I went to my brother's, and I sat there for 4 days, and he's like, where do you keep getting alcohol from? I said, it's in my truck. And, you know, he called Allendale and told him to come pick me up, and he said, I can't sit here and watch you kill yourself. He's like, you sat there the other day and you were catatonic, and I was like, I didn't know if you were dead, you were just there. And he's like, I was looking at the bottles that you went through, but when I went back to rehab this time was the most serious I ever took it. Was my third time at Allendale, my third time at Fort Wayne Recovery. This was the most serious I ever took it. And I went into it. Allendale was like, look, me and my wife split up. And, you know, I don't know where I'm going to live or whatever. And, you know, I was in Allendale 2 weeks and I got divorce papers. And then I found out my job fired me. So that was tough. But I dove in everything that Fort Wayne Recovery asked me to do. I did, and I did it wholeheartedly. And, you know, I finished their MRT, and that I think at that point they believed I was going to be okay, even though I had some things going on. And I graduated from there, and I got into a really nice halfway house, and I had a really good job. And I was thinking, if I can just do this for a couple more months, she'll take me back. And
so you were still doing it, trying to kind of you had motive to do it, right? Maybe try to get the relationship back.
Yeah, and she had called me and said, I need you to sign those papers. And I was like, you don't think there's anything we could do? She's like, no, I'm dead set. It's you've had 4 months, I think, to sign them. And, you know, we had to work out a few things in the paperwork. You know, she got the house and everything in the house. I got my truck and my clothes and some of my property and my tools and stuff. And we came to an agreement that she never asked for child support. So, I mean, I was thinking, this isn't bad. And, you know, I even had people tell me, even if you sign it and she has it, and she still might not go through with it. Well, she went through with it. And, when I found out that we were officially divorced, would have been our 6th wedding anniversary. That was when I found out.
Yeah.
So we were married in September, and I found out that day is when I seen it, like, hey, you're officially divorced. And, I drank that day, drank for about a week, went back to Allendale, didn't take it serious, was mad the whole time, got out, drank immediately, went back to Allendale, went back to Fort Wayne Recovery this time, didn't take it serious, was mad, didn't finish it. I ran from Fort Wayne Recovery. So I got to a point, I was like, I'm done. It's not working. I'm mad. I'm going to do what I want. Grabbed all my stuff, drove to my brother's, told him, I was like, hey, I can't be there. Like, can I stay here again, He's like, all right, I'll give you another chance. Drank, went back to Allendale. So this is all like within 6 months. Went back to Allendale, asked my brother if I could come back again. I was like, I got it this time. I took Allendale serious this time and tried to work on some things. Got back to my brother's. I was there about 5 days, drank for 2 weeks straight. I said, look, dude, I started drinking again. I got to go back. And this time he told me, he said, when you leave, you cannot come back here. So now I'm within a year. I've had my ex-wife and my brother tell me, like, when I walk out the door, I can't come back there.
Yeah.
So I went back to Allendale again. And I was like, all right, I got to do something with my life. They let me back into Fort Wayne Recovery a fifth time. I cried and I begged like a little sissy, and I was like, let me in. I was like, I'm being for real. Like, dude, I'm like, this is it. And I went back, and like they had some stipulations for me, like, and they were doing some things a little different. And they were like, this is kind of just like a soft landing for you, because we can't really have you do a class that hasn't worked the first 4 times.
Yeah.
And I just got a job, and I went to the doctor, just having some health issues. I was having issues using the bathroom, and I found out that, I had a hemorrhoid and a cyst that they had to take out. And during surgery, they didn't see it on like a scan, but he's like, you had cancer in there too that we didn't see. And it's like, we couldn't wake you up and ask you to take it out. So now I'm like, oh man, dude, like, I'm to the brink already with the things I'm trying to do. And then I found out I had this, and it was it said we had to take a lot out, but we got it all, is what he said. He said, I'm 100% confident we got it all. You just have to come back for checkups, and the area of the body is not favorable for surgery because it doesn't stop working because you had surgery. So I was in pain. And, pain meds weren't my drug of choice. I never liked them. I had never got into street drugs. So they gave them to me, and they monitored them. But I didn't like how they made me feel, so I think it was the 3rd or 4th day, I said, I want to give them back to you because I don't like them. Do they take the pain away? Yes. But they make me extremely irritable.
Yeah.
Like, I don't like them. I'm like the most angry person on those. I was like, I don't even know how people could take these to get high. That was just me. And after a day of no pain pills, I was like, I know what'll make me feel better. And I bet you can guess where I went.
Liquor store, I bet.
Yeah, and there was one about a block and a half from where I was staying. Like, I just walked up there. I didn't even drive my truck. And I started sneaking it back and forth, like guessing where I was going to have to do drug screens, and I got there's another halfway house waiting on me to get there once I'm squared away. But I have this medical issue now. And eventually it came up to where I drank the night before, and I was going to have to do this drug screen. I knew I wasn't going to pass it. So when they text, I said, yeah, I'll be there. And I grabbed all my stuff, and I ran again. I ran to my brother's. And on the way there, I lied to him and said they kicked me out. Well, they're not dumb. After I had talked to my brother, they called him and he said, "You want to tell me why they're calling me and saying you just ran from there?" I said, "No, dude, they kicked me out." And he's like, "Look, dude, I don't think they would call me." Multiple people telling me you ran, and they're looking for you because they want to help you. Like, they think you're about to do something dumb. And I was like, and he starts crying. He goes, "I can't believe you lied to me again." And he was mad. And he's like, "You got 10 minutes to get out of my driveway, or I'm calling the cops." So I go out to my truck, and I'm trying to call people, somebody where I can stay, and the cops pull up. Now, I hadn't started my truck. I hadn't even shut my door. And what's going on? And he's like, "Your brother wants you to leave. He's trespassing you off the property." And, this is like the middle of the summer of 2023. And then I don't know how this happened, but 2 people from Allendale pulled up right after the cops. So I'm standing there, and you got 2 of the outreach guys from Allendale and the cops. And the cop took my keys. He goes, "You got 2 choices. You're going to jail, or you're going to get in the car and go with them wherever they're telling you to go." And I had just packed my stuff, and I'm like, OCD, so I had everything in order where I just had to grab 2 bags and say, "Well, I'm going back to Allendale again."
Yeah.
Healing from surgery, drunk. And but they got me squared away. I had some complications healing, so when I went back to Allendale this time, this was the longest time I had ever stayed there. It was like 7 weeks, six and a half weeks.
Yeah.
And they got me healed up, and I took it serious. I was like, "Look, like, whatever you guys are telling me, or like whatever you think I need to work on, let's do it." But up to this point, I was like, as far as financially strained, I was done. Like, I was to the point I had to file for a bankruptcy, and I didn't have but maybe enough money for one more truck payment. And I got to this place called the 13-Step House, and, this was the first time I ever prayed to God, and I meant it. Because before that, it was like, "Hey, I need a favor." And then if it came through, I was like, "Thanks, I got it from here." But I prayed, I was like, "I need your help because I am so out of control." And people were telling me, like, to, pray, talk to them, be serious about it, and see what happens. And it wasn't but 2 weeks after that, I got a really good job that was going to be able to, facilitate me to get through the bankruptcy and my truck and stuff. And so I did that for, I think I made it to 5 months sober that time. And right around Thanksgiving, up to this point, I was getting a little depressed because I was working through these steps in AA, and I said, "I want to be serious. Like, I want all this. If you say that's going to work, tell me what needs to be on there or where I need to go in my mind to put it on here so I don't got to deal with it no more." So I started getting in, like, some serious things, some serious feelings I had about my mom and other people in my past, and it made me depressed thinking about it. And I started asking my brother, I said, "Can I come back? Like, I'm good. I'm up here. All my family's down there. I can't really just go and visit them. I have to have, like, meet certain, put in passes and stuff, and it's got to get approved." And he was like, "No." So I started drinking, and I got away with it for about a week. And then I was like, dude, I just felt so convicted of, like, I did all this work and I said all these things, and here I am again. And I told on myself. And they didn't kick me out. They just told me I was going to have to do, like, a 2-month restriction. And I was like, cool. I was cool with it. I was going to do it. It was going to roll me through to, like, the start the next year, and I was going to be cool. But after restriction a week, I found a way to get alcohol, And I drank again for like 3 or 4 days. And I told him again, well, not only did I tell him again, like as I was telling him, I was like, I got to go downstairs. And I fell down the stairs, like backwards, and they had to call ambulance. And I was like, yeah, dude. When I was sitting in the hospital that night, I was like, yeah, I'm a train wreck, dude. Because I don't even remember how much of the alcohol I drank, but I had like 5 pints of alcohol. And I know I drank at least 4 of them, I think. I don't know if I got to the 5th one, like within an hour. And it all hit me at once. And I got scared. That's why, I told on myself. I was like, dude, they're going to know anyways. And I'm like in this paranoid state. And I was like, dude, how did I do that? Like, God answered and came through, and here I am again. So they made me go to Avenues this time. Allendale would not take me back. And I was frustrated in Avenues quite a bit. And I was like, I'm coming out of here, and I got this time. Well, I got out of Avenues. They let me back in the step house. I was like, you're still got a 2-month restriction, and we're gonna be watching you, and you got to do some things. So I stayed for a night, and the next day, I stayed for 2 nights. However, it worked out. I got out for Christmas, and then I left, and I was like, asked my brother if I could come to his house, and he said no. So this was one of the first nights I slept in my truck for a night, drinking, and then the next night the cops came. I made it to a hotel room. And then I remember I left that hotel room, went back to my brother, and said, look, you got to let me in here. I'm sleeping in my truck. It's like I have an 8. And he said no. And I was refusing to leave, so the cops came, and I went to jail on New Year's Eve. And I was like, now I'm in jail, and I don't have no money. And I didn't finish this. I didn't finish that. Like now I just added problems, and I was like, let's just put some alcohol on top of it.
Yeah.
So
we've had a lot of trips to like rehab and everything. So so let's get to the part. Let's get to where like God starts to move in your life. So you go to jail. You end up in transitional housing back here in Grant County, right? Eventually.
Yeah.
Eventually. So what happened there?
I got out of jail, and some guys in there said, go to the Grant County Rescue Mission, and they'll help you get squared away. So I went there. I got my truck, and I went there, and I still had a little bit of money, and like enough money to where I could get a job. But I was only at the mission like 6 days, and the guy working there said, I'm going to catch you drinking if you drink. Like, I already know all about you. I called and found out. I was like, dang, dude, I got like a reputation. He's like, yeah. So he caught me drinking, kicked me out. I went to the Disciples of Christ house. And your first 2 weeks there, you don't get no phone, no TV. It's just you and the Bible. And the guy working there named Zach, he got me to start opening it up and reading it. And I remember I started praying every day. He's like, just pray, just talk to him. Like, I know you asked me if you don't know if you're praying right. Just sit down and tell him what you got going on and ask for guidance. Like, don't be specific. Like, just tell him what's going on. Like, what's in your life and like what you're trying to do. Like have a conversation with them like we are. And I started reading, I started in the Gospels, and I would ask him, like, what's this mean? What's this mean? And he goes, well, I can kind of tell you, but I'll let it grow on you.
Yeah.
And, I remember going to church the first night I got there, or the first Sunday I was there, and I stood up and I was crying. I said, look, my life is a wreck right now, and I don't know what I'm doing, but I want God to save my life.
Yeah.
In church, like first time ever there. And they all just looked at me, and, they started clapping, and some people gave me a hug, and I felt that. Like, you know, when that people have that spirit on them, and like that energy, and they're touching you and they're praying on you.
Yeah.
And I was feeling it. And it made me want to go read more of the Bible and come back and to church. Well, the problem is of course, I'm at DOC house. I get a job really quick, and I get money again, and I'm doing good, and I got my truck back, and I'm going to be able to work through this. So what do? What's Kevin always do?
Right.
Drank.
Yeah.
But this time again, I felt some type of way about it, and I told on myself. I was like, look, Zach, I do this all the time. I know I told you I was going to do it. You warned me, and I'm just trying to figure out what's missing in there. And he goes, I don't know, but we're not going to kick you out. You're going to have some consequences. So I sat there for most of the day, and I was like, look, Zach, I can't do this. I'm not doing those consequences.
Yeah.
It's like, I'm trying to get help. He's like, we're trying to help you, but if you're not going to do that, you got to leave. So I left, drank, went to back to the rescue mission to see if they'd let me in, and they won't let you in if you've been drinking. And like, I'm so down on myself, I had to go sleep in my truck again. And I think I went to the first night, it was the Walmart parking lot. That was the first couple nights. And on the way there, I stopped at the liquor store, and I bought like a ridiculous amount of alcohol. And I was like, I'm going to sit here, I'm going to figure this out. Nobody's going to help me. I'm going to do it. And I sat in that truck for 3 or 4 days straight, peeing in Gatorade bottles, not eating. If I had to use like the restroom another way, which I don't even think I ever did because I didn't eat. I just sat there. Like, I looking back, like, I was paranoid. I remember being paranoid, like somebody's gonna find out I'm sleeping in here. But my truck had these really nice tinted windows, so I would park right here just close enough where it looked like I was working in there, but I wasn't. And then the next day I'd park on the other side of the parking lot, and it was just weird, bro. And then like, one day I went down to Meyer and stayed for a couple nights, and then came back, slept on like a side road one night, then went back to Walmart, like dumb.
Yeah.
And, you know, I was so scared to even get out of my truck during the day that I was using those Gatorade bottles, and at night I would pour them out my window. Yeah.
That's crazy, dude.
Yes, dude. And I didn't eat for 3 weeks. I was in that truck. I was in that truck for 3 weeks, and it felt like a prison.
Well, I'm sure it did. It had to. You were kind of stuck in there. So what happens? So what's your next move? Since you obviously didn't stay stuck in the parking lot.
I had went to Gas City a couple times and tried to park at my grandpa's. And I remembered, like, I got this email talking about, you know, I missed a payment on my truck. Now, I'd never missed one before, but then you start going in your mind, like, they're going to come take my truck. So I had all my property in my truck. So I took it to my grandpa's old house and put it on his front porch, which was covered. And I texted my aunt and said, hey, I put my stuff on grandpa's front porch because I think they might be coming to take my truck soon. And I was leaving my grandpa's, and I was coming down the hill by the Gas City Park, and it was like black ice. And I hadn't even drank yet this morning because I was like noiding out trying to do other things, and I just hadn't made it to the liquor store. I came down, I was doing like maybe 40, and I just went straight, and I hit the little thing right there where the campers go and messed up my whole truck. So now I don't even have a truck, and it jammed up my legs pretty good. And I remember I was so twacked out, you know, like, because after I wrecked my truck, I passed the breathalyzer, and they did a blood draw. I was at the hospital, and they let me out, and I kind of just had the clothes I had on. I was already kind of dressed warm because I'd been sleeping in my truck. So I walked from the hospital all the way over to the other liquor store, kind of by the dam, and I bought as much alcohol as I could fit in this big Calvin Klein jacket. and that I could carry in my hands. And I started walking back towards Gas City. And I walked all the way. I remember I had a couple of bottles. I finished from there to 38th Street. I went in and got more. Then I got on the walkway and walked all the way to Gas City with my legs messed up. And they had shot me full of Ativan because I told them I was withdrawing off alcohol, so I couldn't feel nothing, and I'm drunk.
Yeah.
And it's snowing. But I made it to my grandpa's, and he had this old bus behind his house that he had tried to restore. And I got the door to open, and I shut it. I had enough alcohol. What I thought was going to be a week, but it was really like 2 days. So I sat there and I drank, and I had a little bucket I peed in, and at night I'd dump it. And my aunt had said something to her neighbors about watching. Well, I walked up there at night is when I finally got there. So they didn't see me get on the bus, but after a few days I ran out of alcohol. So I was like, I gotta get off this bus and look discreet and get to the liquor store in Gas City. And by this point I had so many demons on me, and I'd lost hope. I was like, I said, one of these nights I'm just going to drink, and that's going to be the last time I drink because I'm probably not going to wake up. I remember being so hungry, but I couldn't. I remember I tried to drink some water, and I threw up because the only thing my body would take is alcohol. And this neighbor had seen me walking back from the liquor store, and I was trying to zigzag. I thought I was being stealthy. I wasn't. But she didn't see me get on the bus, and the way I was hiding in the bus, remember my aunt looked in there and said she didn't see me, so she never really thought anything about it. Where I ran out of alcohol again, had to get off the bus again. This time she called the cops, and the cops seen me there. And they were like, look, if you just leave, you won't go to jail. And I said, I'm not leaving. It's my grandpa's house. I'm staying. Yeah, they were like, she owns this house now. You got to leave. So I ain't doing it. So you're not making me leave this house. And I was cussing. I said, all right, if you want to go to jail. Like, they literally gave me like 30 minutes of trying to talk me out of doing it, and I wouldn't do it. I went to jail. Now, because I went to jail, and I had to sober up to get out, then I could go back to the mission. And, I ended up going to my brother's until I could check in, and I'm withdrawing bad. Like one of the worst times I've ever withdrawn. Now I'm not in a detox center or any safe place. I'm left to my own devices. So I'm like smoking a cigarette like every 10 minutes. And my aunt takes me down there. She's like, he'll pass this one. And they check me in, and there's like, we don't want you to go anywhere for a week. Like, normally we don't just put people on restriction as soon as they get here, but you're not going anywhere for a week. And during that week, I decided to join that Life Change program.
Yeah.
And, I got up every morning withdrawn. I'd pray. I'd read the Bible that I had with me at the time until I got the one back that I got from the DOC house. And I'd pray, and I'd go talk to people. And I remember the guy working at the mission. He looked at me after being there about 4 days, and he goes, look, I don't know why I feel like this, but you're going to make it. And I believed him.
Yeah.
It was like a moment like where when he looked at me and he said it, like something that how he said it and how way he looked at me, I felt this power come over me like, okay, that's the beginning of like whatever God's about to do. And I just prayed for like 2 weeks straight, like, if there's more to come, just hit me with it. If there's not, whatever you got planned, start putting in front of me, because I cannot live like this no more. And after, over the next couple months, I had just quit doing this bankruptcy in the middle of it, and it worked out.
Yeah.
And I wrecked my truck, not knowing if I'd paid my insurance. And I had like 3 days till my insurance lapsed, so the truck worked itself out. And then I thought that, when they did the blood draw, I was like, yeah, they're going to know that I was drinking the night before. I was like, because I passed the breathalyzer, but I wasn't totally convinced that I had got away with it.
Yeah.
So I was like, they're going to come get me. And I I even asked my probation officer, I was like, when are they going to come get me for that? And he goes, look, dude, I haven't heard anything about it. He said, I can tell you the day that they sent it off, the day they got it back, and I never heard anything about it. I still nothing was ever said. So he goes, as far as I know, I think you passed it.
Yeah.
I was like, how? And I really I felt God like that. And then moments, that I didn't necessarily pray for something specific. I just wanted him to start doing work on me.
Yeah.
And he did. And when I started feeling that, I was like, I got to start reading the Bible more. I taking this serious. I was like, I started diving into I remember going to Pastor Brad, Jeremy. I'd always ask him questions. Like, tell me something, anything. You can tell me anything as long as it's about God or Jesus. I'll listen.
Yeah.
And I remember I went back to that church, and I said, I want to get baptized. I want to, from what I read up to that point, that's where I want to be in my faith right now, and I believe that's where God's telling me to go. And I sat down with that pastor for an hour and a half one day, and he said, when you come out of that water, you're going to be a different person, and God's got a purpose for you, and it's going to start showing itself in your life if you're ready. I said, dude, I'm ready. Right, we can get baptized right now. And he said, well, we got it planned for you.
Right.
He's like, and he goes, if there's anything you want to say or anything. And I said, I was like, I'm just kind of going to go. I don't want to really plan anything. I'm just going to go with what's on my heart. And I went with the Bible verse that we were doing for the program that week. And that's what I read before I got baptized. It was from James. Resist the devil and he'll flee from you. Draw closer to God and he'll draw closer to you. Cleanse your hands, you sinner, and purify your heart, you double-minded. That's what I said. And then he dunked me. And I came out, and I remember going under and coming up, and just feeling the water run off of me. And I looked out, and I seen some of the biggest smiles and people celebrating. It was like I won the championship. People were looking, they were excited, and it was weird that there was a lot of people at church that day, and I don't know why. I don't know if I don't think it was for me. It was just that it happened to be one of those days where everybody decided they were going to come to church that week.
Yeah.
There was over 100 and some people there, and normally it's 40. Because I looked out and I was like, that's a big crowd.
Yeah.
And yeah. And I remember I talked to the pastor, and I kept coming back, and I'd always tell him this is what I'm reading this week. I kind of I didn't go in any order of the Bible. I kind of went where went with what I was doing at the mission until I started hitting repeat things. Then I went to the beginning, and if there was something I hadn't read yet, that's what I read.
So, Kevin, how long have you been sober as of today?
Almost 14 months.
14 months. That's crazy.
Yeah.
So, it helped to have an encounter with God a little bit, didn't it? In that journey, figuring out the faith stuff and starting to work through that process, even though it may have taken you a couple of introductions to it. 14 months, that's wild. After all of that, what do you think is, so what's different about your life today?
So the biggest difference I notice is I have these old habits that are still in there.
Yeah.
A big one for me is cussing. I don't cuss as much, but I'm not saying I don't cuss. But it's that feeling you get when, we were talking about forgiveness or cussing, or, when you're God put something in front of me and you see somebody that needs help. Before I might have looked at him and be I don't got time. But now it's I got time.
Yeah.
Am I going to use it for what God's showing me?
Yeah.
Those little things, those little convictions.
So you went
I
from,
feel those all the time.
because you were selfish. You were really selfish, right? And now
Yeah.
entering into the kingdom, because I know you personally, and it's kind of the opposite. You know what I mean? You're much more of a servant. You have a servant's heart. So it's like the selfish Kevin has kind of passed away, you know?
Yeah. And I still feel myself sometimes, don't ask me why, but even when like I could say like maybe there's no type of obligation, like when I go do something, people come to my mind of like that I see through the week of maybe I could help that dude because I seen him earlier this week, and like I don't know how to help him. So I guess when I was in active addiction, my love language was like gifts. Like if somebody gave me a gift, that was like the greatest thing ever.
Yeah.
And that carried over to like, I don't know what he's going through or how I can help him, but I bet if I just gave him like a candy bar or something, anything like out of the blue, it might hit something like a bright spot, it might have been like a really dark week for that person. And just an act of kindness, dude, that just makes it like that little glimmer of hope, because that's what was given to me.
Yeah.
I didn't have anything, I struggled for the longest time with the higher power thing and recovery. I had to meet the one true God.
Amen.
And that's what changed it. And it wasn't because I didn't believe in him. I just hadn't met the one I needed to meet. There was only one.
Yeah.
That's what changed for me. And I get like overpowered by that. And I can't forget that. Like when I finally met him and I had a conversation with him on how I should have talked to God, not how, like I want 50% God's will, 50% my will. No, God's will. Like the things he's done for me. Because there's people, a lot of people in Fort Wayne had to deal with me through the rehabs and stuff, and like they're like, he's really sober now?
Yeah.
like for good?
Yeah.
Like there's no strings attached? Like seriously, and I shared that, and I couldn't explain it any other way than God had a purpose for me, and he uses me in different ways, and the more that he uses me, the more I want to do. It's kind of like, I look at it like some scales. I got all this, and, there's people over here with nothing, so I got all this weight over here, and these people, the more I take off here and put it over here, the higher I get lifted.
Yeah.
That's the only way I could describe it.
I like that, yeah.
Like, really.
Yeah.
Like, if I take more off my side of the scale and put it over here, I get lifted higher, and they get what they need.
Yeah.
That's the only way I could describe it.
I love that.
Yeah, and he works on me every day. I'll be at work, and I'll feel that anger, and I'm like, okay. And the most simplest point, like, is that really worth getting angry over? No. Is that what God wants me to be doing right now? No. How can I make the situation better? Maybe do this. I think now that people have seen me sober and do testimonies, like there's eyeballs on me now. So now like I have to walk even firmer. Yeah. And I don't know if you ever felt that.
Oh yes. RJ, I have felt that. And there's been times where I've fallen very short of what that reproach line is that I'm supposed to be living above, but it definitely, people are watching, you know what I mean, and paying attention and everything, and especially like this last year, it's really been God's been working with me on just like, you know what I mean, also not causing people to stumble, which is a lot deeper than saying like, me not doing anything to cause somebody else to stumble is very deep if you pray about it and process, because stumbling can be a very loaded thing, a lot of different things, you know what I mean? Just because it's not something I've stumbled on before, I still have to live above that line and not cause that to other people. And it takes some takes some empathy, but also just it takes a lot of prayer and guidance from Holy Spirit, because I don't know what all those stumbling blocks are. So for other people, so just being and also just being aware is probably good too.
Yeah. I have I'm in the dorm now, and I'm like, there's this big gap. I'm in phase 4 getting ready to graduate, and then we have...
You're in the dorm at the Grant County Rescue Mission.
Yeah,
so,
and then we have 6 guys, like 3 in phase 1 and 3 in pre-phase, like 7 started the program. And one thing I kind of do, when they'll come talk to me, so you talked about stumbling, right?
Yeah.
So if they see me, just using an analogy, like in my walk, and this rock causes me to trip up a little bit, I can look at them and say, you see that rock?
Yeah.
It tripped me up a little bit, but it doesn't have to trip you up because you've seen what it did to me.
Yeah.
Like, really.
Amen.
And I would never have used myself before. I'd have been like, yeah, it got me. It's probably going to get them too. I'm just going to keep going.
Right.
Not even like a revenge thought, but like, they'll figure it out.
Yeah.
Like, that's one of them convictions of, they don't have to step on that rock. They're probably going to still hit one, but it don't got to be that one because I already kicked it for them.
Yeah. Well, it's looking out for people, which is a beautiful thing. So that's awesome. Good stuff. So many just, kind of breaking down the layers of and the impact and the cost, because there was a cost to your decision making, and some people had to have really strict boundaries with you eventually, especially your family. So it's been awesome because I've had a chance to watch, and just watching, what God's doing in your life has been amazing. So before we close out, RJ, do you have anything?
I don't think so, man.
Okay.
It's a powerful story.
I think it's, I didn't interject a lot because really it's like a lot of times I think with alcohol, even in family and stuff, you're just like, that's just how they are.
Right.
You get what I'm saying? And I think really breaking down that repetitive nature of like, yeah, I can do good for a month, but you know what I mean? And just the access, I think, is another thing, because like if I want to go do crack, there's a process to that. If I want to drink, I just got to stop somewhere on my way home. So there's not so much of that thought process. Yeah. So, well, Kevin, we love you. Thank you for coming on.
I appreciate you having me, and I hope to all the listeners out there that you got something out of the story. If you get a good opportunity to succeed, in your recovery, take it. But if you don't succeed, don't ever feel like that's the end of your recovery.
Yeah.
That's one of the things I'm grateful for, is like I never stopped, even though I didn't do very good in some of those. You don't ever have to quit. There's so much recovery stuff out there, and there's so many options. Find God, find what works for you in your recovery, and stick to it.
Yeah. And we want to give a shout out to Allendale, Fort Wayne Recovery, Grant County Rescue Mission, DOC House, all of those places, avenues, all of those places played a part in that journey. So it may, when you're listening to the story, you might be like, none of it was a failure. You know what I'm saying? Like all that we can do is try to give people the tools, and they come back, we give them more tools, and we set boundaries, and we change. But all of those places, and we obviously have a really good relationship here with Bare Knuckle Recovery, Allendale, and Fort Wayne Recovery. So a lot of amazing people up there.
Yes.
So, yeah, we want to give a shout out to all them. Shout out to Delivered Media and RJ, the man behind the curtain. Love you, RJ. Appreciate you.
Love you too, man. Appreciate you.
And thank you, Kevin, for coming on. We want to thank everybody that supports us. And we have some we're probably going to be making some adjustments moving forward. So just, I feel like I went dark there. But yeah, just keep listening, and we appreciate all your support. Please subscribe, follow, give us a review. check us out. We're on Facebook and TikTok, but more importantly, YouTube, Spotify, and Apple, because that's where we operate. So we hope you all have a blessed weekend. Hope you get to spend some time with your family and, acknowledge what this is that, it's an amazing week, Holy Week. Break it down. Talk to your kids about it. Like I said, this is dropping on Wednesday, so we'll be halfway through it. We love you guys, and this has been Escaping the Chains podcast. I'm John Humphreys, and we will see you next Wednesday morning.